The sea breeze stung Amelia's face, but she didn't care. The late afternoon sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the Pacific in streaks of fiery orange and soft lavender. She leaned against the railing of the cruise ship, the Ocean Wanderer, and inhaled deeply, the scent of the sea filling her lungs. It was a far cry from the warm, yeasty air of her small bakery, Sweet Surrender, back in Portland, Oregon. This was exactly what she needed. Beside her, Liam, her 10-year-old son, was glued to the railing, his small hands gripping the metal, eyes wide with wonder. "Mom, look!" he exclaimed, pointing to a pod of dolphins leaping through the waves. His usually pale cheeks were flushed from the sun, and his unruly brown hair was tousled by the sea breeze. Amelia smiled. Liam's excitement was infectious. She loved seeing him so happy, so carefree. This trip was a spur-of-the-moment escape, born of anger and frustration, but now, as she watched the dolphins dance in the water and saw the joy on her son's face, she felt a sense of quiet triumph. She glanced at the man beside her, her husband, Daniel, whose salt and pepper hair was ruffled by the breeze. His eyes, usually crinkled with worry over the intricacies of running his architectural firm, were now softened with relaxation. This trip, their trip, was a balm to her wounded soul. It had started with a phone call, a seemingly innocuous one from her sister, Bethany. "Hey, Ames." Bethany had chirped, her voice a sugary mix of forced enthusiasm and underlying stress. "I just wanted to let you know that Mom's retirement party is going to be a little different." Amelia had been kneading dough, the sticky mass a familiar comfort. "Oh? Different how?" she asked, not really paying attention, already mentally calculating the baking schedule for the next day. Liam, who was sitting at the kitchen table doing his homework, looked up at the mention of party. "Well," Bethany continued, her tone growing slightly frantic. "Aunt Carol is finally, retiring from the accounting firm, and we're all going on this amazing cruise to Hawaii. Isn't that exciting?" Amelia's hands stopped working. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "A cruise? To Hawaii?" she repeated, her voice rising slightly. Liam's eyes lit up. Hawaii. He loved Hawaii, even though he'd only ever seen it in pictures. "Yeah. Isn't it great? It's like a big family blowout. A send-off for Carol, you know, for all her years of service." Bethany's voice was now a hurried babble. "It's a 3-day cruise, then a few days in Hawaii and then back. We've got it all planned out." Amelia could barely process the information. "And when is this happening?" she asked slowly, her mind reeling. "Next week," Bethany said quickly, as if it was an afterthought. "We're all so excited." Next week. The words hit Amelia like a physical blow. Next week? No one had said a word. Not her parents, not her siblings, not a single one of her extended family. How was this even possible? She had seen them just last weekend at a family barbecue, a gathering she'd organized herself. The constant chatter of the younger kids, the usual bickering between her cousins, and not one single mention of this monumental trip. Not one clue. She'd even brought her special lavender-infused lemonade that everyone always raved about. It felt like a twisted joke. "And why am I just hearing about this now?" Amelia asked, trying to keep her voice steady, the dough ball now abandoned, half-kneaded. Liam was now listening intently to their conversation. There was a short silence on the other end of the line, long enough for Amelia's heart to begin to sink. "Oh, well, you know, things were kind of hectic. We just assumed you were in. We didn't want to bother you with all the details." Bethany's voice was now laced with an artificial sweetness that sent a shiver down Amelia's spine. "Bother me? With a major family vacation? How is that bothering me?" Amelia's voice started to rise in volume. Liam was now staring at his mother with concern. Bethany chuckled nervously. "Well, you know, you are so good with kids and we just figured you'd be watching the little ones." The truth came crashing down, cold and hard. Amelia's face flushed. "Watching the little ones?" She practically spat the words. Yeah, you know, Leo's 3-year-old, and my little 2-year-old, and then the twins. Bethany continued, oblivious to the simmering rage that was starting to bubble inside Amelia. Amelia could hear the sound of other voices in the background, her sister's kids squealing. So, you all planned this big vacation, didn't tell me a thing, and just assumed I'd be the designated babysitter? Without even asking me? Bethany's voice became placating, as if she were talking to a child. Oh, Ames, don't be like that. It's just what family does. We always help each other. We thought you would understand. That was it. That was the final straw. Amelia could feel the blood pounding in her temples. The assumption, the utter lack of respect, the blatant disregard for her time and her life. That was all too much. I understand perfectly. Amelia said, her voice dangerously calm. I understand that you have zero respect for me or my time, and that you all think I'm nothing more than a free babysitting service. She hung up, the dial tone a stark counterpoint to the chaotic thoughts swirling in her head. She roughly slammed the phone down. She stood there, staring at the half-formed loaf, the anger churning in her gut. Liam had stopped doing his homework and was staring up at her with worried eyes. She hadn't felt this disregarded, this invisible, in years. This wasn't the first time. It was a pattern, a cycle. Amelia was the dependable one, the quiet one, the one who always understood. She was the one who helped out, who baked the goodies for every gathering, who listened to all the family dramas and offered a sympathetic ear. She had always been the one who put their needs before her own. She was the glue, always there, always dependable, and therefore, always taken for granted. Her family always seemed to forget that she had her own life. Her own business to run, a husband to love, a son to nurture. She loved her family, yes, deeply. But she was also tired, exhausted by their casual entitlement and their relentless expectations. She didn't bother to call her parents or any of her siblings. She didn't want to hear the excuses, the justifications, the thinly veiled manipulations. She didn't want to argue, or plead, or beg to be seen. She'd done that too many times. This time, she would do things differently. She grabbed her phone and called Daniel. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, my love. He said, his voice warm. Daniel, we're going on vacation. She said, her voice tight with a mix of anger and determination. Vacation? Daniel's voice was surprised. When? Next week. As soon as possible. Daniel paused. Where to? I don't care. Anywhere. Somewhere far away from here. Somewhere my family can't find us. There was a beat of silence, and then Daniel chuckled. Sounds like someone's had a bad day. It was worse than bad, Daniel. It was insulting. Amelia said, and proceeded to tell him the story of the cruise, the planned trip, and the casual assumption that she would, of course, watch all the kids. Daniel listened quietly, his usual good humor replaced by a grim silence. When she finished, he said simply, Okay, let's do it. I've got some vacation time saved. Let's book something. That was the beginning. They found a last-minute deal on a cruise to Hawaii. The Ocean Wanderer, a mid-sized liner, was perfect and surprisingly affordable for a last-minute booking. Liam was ecstatic when he heard the news, his face alight with joy. Within hours, they had flights and cruise tickets booked. They packed, leaving a bare minimum of work behind them. They left no messages for the family, nothing to hint at their departure. The day her family was supposed to leave for their own grand adventure, Amelia, Daniel, and Liam were boarding their flight at Portland International Airport. The first call came at 7:30 the next morning as they were enjoying their breakfast at the ship's buffet. Amelia saw the number flashing on her phone. It was Bethany. She looked at Daniel, who raised his eyebrows in amusement, and then she hit the ignore button. Then the texts started coming from Bethany, her mother, and her cousin, Leo. They were all variations of the same panicked message. Where was she? Why wasn't she answering her phone? Where were they supposed to drop off the kids? Amelia read each message with a growing sense of satisfaction. The chaos she was causing was exactly what her family deserved. She had spent far too much of her life accommodating their whims and expectations. Now, it was their turn to deal with the consequences of their actions. The text from her cousin Leo was the most audacious. Amelia, you cannot be serious. You were supposed to be at home and ready for the kids. Where are you? He even threatened to call the police, accusing her of abandoning her responsibilities even though no conversation had ever taken place. Amelia chuckled, showing the text to Daniel, who was clearly enjoying her act of rebellion. Liam peered over her shoulder, a wide grin spreading across his face. Responsibility? She snorted. I didn't sign up for anything. Liam, who was now thoroughly invested in the unfolding drama, said, This is so cool, Mom. You're like a superhero. It's not being a superhero, it's justice. Amelia retorted, feeling a surge of exhilaration. The rest of the cruise was bliss. They explored the ship, ate amazing food, soaked up the sun, laughed, and danced. Liam loved the ship's kids' club and made friends with a few other boys his age. They even managed to get Daniel to participate in a line dancing competition on the deck, much to Liam's amusement. They arrived in Hawaii, relaxed and rejuvenated, ready to explore the islands. They hiked through lush rainforests, swam in crystal-clear waters, and witnessed breathtaking sunsets. The whole trip was a stark contrast to the stressful life that Amelia had left behind. She found herself relaxing for the first time in a long while, feeling like a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Liam spent hours on the beach, building sandcastles and splashing in the waves. When they finally returned to Portland, a week later, Amelia knew the storm was coming. It was inevitable. As soon as they stepped through the door of their home, the phone started ringing. It was her mother. Amelia put her on speakerphone. Amelia, where have you been? Her mother's voice was sharp, almost frantic. On vacation, Mom. Amelia said calmly. There was a moment of stunned silence. Vacation? But what about the children? What about the cruise? What about them? Amelia asked, the calm in her voice bordering on ice. Her mother spluttered. You were supposed to watch them. Everyone was counting on you. Really? Well, I don't remember being asked. I don't remember agreeing. All I remember is that you all decided that I should be the free daycare option and didn't even bother to inform me that I would not be part of the actual planned trip. Amelia responded. Her mother's voice grew shriller. But your sister couldn't go, and Leo had to cancel, and so did Aunt Brenda. And they couldn't get their money back. That sounds like a personal problem. Amelia said, her voice devoid of sympathy. I don't see how any of that is my fault. You all made your plans, you made assumptions, and now you're dealing with the consequences. Perhaps you all should have considered all the family before purchasing tickets. Her mother started to cry. Amelia, you're being cruel. This isn't how family treats each other. Listen, Mom. Amelia said, her voice firm. This is how family mustn't treat each other. You can't just assume and expect things without my permission, without my input. And you certainly can't treat me like a disposable babysitter. She hung up, disconnecting the call with a sigh. The storm had arrived, and she was ready for it. The next day, her cousin Leo came banging on her door, his face red with anger. Daniel answered the door. Liam hid behind his mother, peering up at Leo with wide eyes. Where is Amelia? Leo roared, pushing past Daniel. Amelia stepped into the hallway, her arms crossed. I'm right here, Leo. What do you want? You ruined everything. Leo yelled. Because of you, everyone had to cancel their plans because you decided to go on your own selfish trip. Selfish? Amelia raised an eyebrow. You're calling me selfish? You all planned a major family vacation, didn't tell me a single thing, and then just assumed I'd be happy to babysit all of your children. And yet I'm the selfish one? You were supposed to be there for us, Amelia. Leo shouted. That's what family does. No. Amelia said, her voice calm but firm. That's what family should not do. You know, I thought that if I was clear enough in my response to Bethany over the phone, you all might have realized that I was not going to allow you to take advantage of me anymore. But, I guess you all truly thought I was joking. She sighed and shook her head. No, Leo. That's not what family does. Family respects each other. Family communicates. Family doesn't make decisions about other people's lives without their consent. And family certainly doesn't treat each other like they're expendable. Leo sputtered, his face getting even flushed. You're being ridiculous. You're being childish. You need to learn how to be a good family member. And you need to learn how to treat people like they're human beings and not some free labor resource. Amelia countered, her voice now sharp. And here's a lesson, Leo, since you seem to need one, my house is not a daycare center. My time is not free for the taking. And I'm not responsible for the chaos that you all created. The only thing I'm responsible for is my own actions and the well-being of my own family. Leo was speechless for a moment, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He then proceeded to hurl a few more insults, including one that compared her to the devil, before finally stomping away. Liam, who had been hiding behind Amelia, looked up at his mother with wide eyes. Wow, Mom, you were so brave. He said, his voice filled with admiration. Amelia ruffled his hair. I just had to stand up for myself, sweetie. That's all. Amelia knew that this was just the beginning. The anger, the resentment, the accusations, they would likely continue for weeks, maybe even months. She knew that her family, especially her mother and cousins, were not the kind of people to admit their mistakes and actually apologize. She closed the door and turned to Daniel. Well, that was intense. She said, a small smile playing on her lips. You were magnificent. Daniel said, wrapping his arms around her. You were absolutely magnificent. Liam ran to his mother and gave her a tight hug. I love you, Mom. Amelia felt a rush of warmth. For the first time in her life, she had stood up for herself. She had drawn a line in the sand. And she had done it without anger, without guilt, without a single ounce of regret. She knew that her relationships with her family might never be the same again. She might lose some of them along the way. But she was okay with that. She was finally putting her own well-being first, and she realized that was a gift she had given herself. In the weeks that followed, the family drama unfolded like a soap opera. There were countless phone calls, texts, and emails, all filled with accusations, threats, and attempts to guilt-trip Amelia. Her mother even tried to get her father involved, but he refused, clearly not interested in being pulled into the drama. He'd always been the quiet one, but Amelia had a feeling that he agreed with her decision, at least on some level. Bethany tried a new tactic, attempting to convince Amelia that she had misinterpreted the situation, and that they had always intended to include her but just not in the main part of the planning. She claimed that Amelia had gotten the wrong impression. However, it was hard to believe anything that Bethany said, given her history of lying. Leo continued his campaign of vilification, telling anyone who would listen what a terrible person Amelia was, and how she was ruining the family. Some of the cousins, the ones who were on the fringes of the family circle, tried to play peacemaker, but their efforts were futile. The main contingent was not interested in finding a peaceful resolution. Amelia stood her ground, refusing to engage in their childish games. She blocked their numbers, ignored their messages, and refused to be drawn into their negativity. Instead, she focused on her work, her marriage, and her son. She poured her energy into her bakery, creating new and innovative pastries that earned her even more customers. She spent evenings with Daniel, taking long walks in the park, enjoying quiet dinners, just the three of them. She encouraged Liam to explore his creative side, enrolling him in an art class that he absolutely loved. She realized that her family's anger was fueled by their own guilt and their own inability to take responsibility for their actions. It wasn't about her. It was about their own flawed character, and she had no power to fix that. The situation did, however, have an unexpected effect on some of the younger family members. Her niece, Maya, Bethany's oldest child, reached out to her through a friend at school. Maya, who was about to turn 16, had always admired Amelia and her fierce independence. She'd always felt a bit suffocated by her own family and their constant drama. She'd told her friend that she saw Amelia's stand as something brave. Her friend had been able to get Amelia's new phone number for Maya, without Bethany finding out. Maya told Amelia that she never liked that her mom would make all these plans without asking everyone. Maya even admitted that she had witnessed her mother and her aunts and uncles laughing, when they were planning the trip, about how they would all get a free babysitter by not inviting Amelia, and that she had been disgusted by their actions. Amelia was surprised, not sure what to expect, but when she received a text message from Maya that simply said, "Aunt Amelia, you're a badass. I want to be like you when I grow up." She felt a strange warmth and a surge of hope. She hoped that Maya would learn from all this and would avoid becoming like her mother. Perhaps, Amelia thought, some of the younger generation would learn from this experience, would learn that it was okay to say no, to stand up for yourself, to break free from the shackles of toxic expectations. In the end, the family cruise to Hawaii did not happen. The money had been non-refundable and the adults were not able to come up with a backup plan, too focused on blaming Amelia. They lost a significant amount of money, which was a fact that they made sure Amelia knew about every chance they got. Amelia and Daniel never discussed what to do next. They just continued with their life, trying to focus on what was important to them, their home, their businesses, and their relationships. They planned a trip to a mountain lodge for a long weekend, just the three of them, away from everyone. They knew, as they made these plans, that their family was not going to change. But they also knew that they were not going to be victims of their dysfunction anymore. They would continue to live their lives on their own terms, not according to the expectations of others, regardless of whether they were family or not. And as she stood on the porch of her bakery, watching the sun rise over the city, Amelia felt a sense of peace. She had finally learned that sometimes, the greatest act of love you can offer is loving yourself enough to walk away. In a way, the unsent invitation had been her liberation. Years passed, and the family dynamics continued to shift. Amelia's decision to create distance had a ripple effect, causing some of her family members to reflect on their behaviors, while others remained stubbornly set in their ways. Maya, now a college student, became a frequent visitor at Amelia's bakery, often helping out and learning the art of pastry making. She confided in Amelia about the challenges of dealing with her mother's constant expectations, and Amelia offered her support and guidance. She'd even helped Maya obtain her first internship in a business setting, which was what Maya was pursuing in college. Maya had become Amelia's confidant and a reminder that not everyone in the family was lost. She was like a daughter to Amelia. Leo, on the other hand, continued to harbor resentment towards Amelia. He occasionally sent her angry messages, ranting about her selfishness and her supposed cruelty. He had moved away from home, living somewhere in the Midwest. It was almost as if he knew that he couldn't act like that in front of his grandmother, as her reaction would be swift and decisive. Amelia often wondered how his children were doing, and what sort of world they were being raised in. Bethany had become increasingly isolated, losing more and more friends because of her inability to keep herself from being so demanding, even when people barely knew her. She had even come to resent Maya, jealous of her relationship with Amelia. Bethany had become obsessed with status, trying to act as if she was the most powerful of all the family. Amelia's parents remained distant but polite. They continued to contact her on her birthday and major holidays, but there was always a sense of awkwardness, a feeling that they were walking on eggshells. She suspected that they had understood that they had been in the wrong but were unable to say it truly. They were the kind of people who had always taken the path of least resistance, of keeping the peace, even if it meant sacrificing their own happiness. And she guessed that they did not think what had happened was really that bad. After all, things had not gotten violent. That was the standard by which they tended to rate their lives. However, Amelia and Daniel's marriage grew stronger with each passing year. They had learned to navigate the world as a team, supporting each other through thick and thin. They had a new dog, a big fluffy Samoyed, which made the house feel very fulfilled. Liam loved to play with the dog, which kept them both very active. They had also begun to take more trips, not just to de-stress, but to also see the world, usually with Liam in tow. Liam had now become a talented young artist, his paintings adorning the walls of their home and the bakery. His art was a testament to the beauty and resilience he found in the world, despite the drama that sometimes surrounded him. Amelia often thought the things might have been different if her family had treated her with more respect and if they had valued her as an individual and not just a convenient babysitting service. But she knew that dwelling on the past was a waste of time. She had made her decision, and she was determined to live a life filled with joy and fulfillment. One day, while baking a cake for Liam's birthday, Amelia received a text message from an unknown number. It was a photo. A photo of a young girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with dark hair and bright eyes. She could instantly tell it was her niece, Sarah. Sarah was Leo's youngest child. The message said, "Aunt Amelia, my dad says that you're the devil. He says you hurt him badly. But he also talks about you a lot. He's mad, but he's also, I don't know, maybe sad. He says that you won't want anything to do with us, but if you could let me come over there, I would like to meet you." Amelia's heart did a strange little jump. She looked at the picture again, her eyes softening. The little girl was just a kid, caught in the crosshairs of a family feud she had no part in. It wasn't the child's fault that her father held on to so much anger. She thought about her own childhood and how she had wished for an adult to stand up for her. Perhaps she had an opportunity to finally do something that would actually make a positive change to someone's life. She hesitated for a moment, her hand hovering over the phone. What was she supposed to do? Should she reach out? Should she ignore it? Was this some sort of trap? Should she even care? Liam came into the kitchen at that moment and looked at her with a questioning glance. He saw her expression and then glanced down at the picture. He pointed at it. "Is that one of our cousins, Mom?" "She looks sad," he said, his little forehead furrowed. That was it. The words, the gentle concern in his voice, made Amelia realize what she had to do. She couldn't turn her back on a child in need, not after everything she had been through. It would be against every principle she had come to hold dear. It was important to her that Liam knew what kind of person she strived to be. She replied to the message. "I would like to meet you, too. I will be in touch." As she added a final layer of frosting to the cake, Amelia smiled. It wasn't the ending she had expected. But she knew, with a deep certainty, that this was the right choice. Her life would continue to evolve, in ways that she couldn't possibly predict. She was ready for it, whatever it might bring. She had finally learned the true meaning of family, of love, and most importantly, of self-worth. And she realized that was all that really mattered.